Guys, in this video, I'm going to show you how to take your $500,000 a year shop and just by a click of a button, make an additional $25,000 in the next 365 days. It's literally that simple, and I'll show you how to do it.
You play to win the game. Hello?
You will not win because I will not lose. Can't be touched.
So many shop owners, and I don't mean this to be negative, they're not very good at math. It all sounds good when you open your shop and you say, I'm going to do all of these things differently. And what so many shop owners fail to do is the math. And so many shop owners don't know what their break even is. So I'm gonna walk through some numbers just right here, and then I'll actually prove this out in a very simple spreadsheet that I've developed that I'll share with everyone. But the average shop owner doing $500,000 a year in sales, who's making money, right? I'm not telling you they're not making money, and there's a lot of shops who are doing $500,000 a year who aren't making money, but the average shop owner doing $500,000 a year in revenue, I'm going to show you in this very simple video with this very simple spreadsheet how without increasing your sales by $1, literally, you're not going to increase your sales by $1, you're just going to understand some basic math, you're going to make an extra $25,000. And this is simple. This is assuming that you're running at 40% margin and we only tweak it to 50% margin. That simple change in margin without increasing your sales one penny will make you an extra $25,000 if you're doing $500,000 in revenue. So you guys are aware, I bought a shop 3 years ago that was running at roughly 38% margin, and it was doing a heck of a lot more than 500,000. I walked in, I changed the margin. We now run at about a 53% margin. And guess what? None of our customers are angry. None of our customers have left. But I understood the very basics of margin, what was acceptable in this industry. And what I want to do is show you. I want to show you just how easy it is to adjust margin. And if you're doing 500,000 at 40% margin on your parts, guess what, guys? You'll be able to make an extra $25,000 and essentially get no pushback from your customers. I'm going to show you on this video. All right, so let's get into this, right? So basically I said, if you got a shop that's doing $500,000 a year, and I'll kind of walk through this. And by the way, guys, this will be available to anybody. I'll post this. You can use this. It's not a very sophisticated tool, you know, but for someone who isn't really looking at this and doesn't really have a grasp on how to calculate a break even or figure out what that is, I can make a video to walk you through this, but I really just want to make a point with this that, you know, if you get a shop who's doing $500,000 a year in revenue, and basically what happens is if you're open 5 days a week, you do 6 cars a day, you do $1,925 per car, or I mean, not per car, a day in sales, your average repair order is going to be $321, your weekly car count is going to be 30, your weekly sales are going to be $9,600, you're going to end up doing, right here, $500,000 in sales. Okay, this is all calculated out. So anybody who wants to use this, anywhere there's blue, there's light blue. If you can change these light blue inputs, and then you'll get outputs. And like I said, I can make another video on how to use this. I really want to make a point about how much money you can make simply by adjusting margin. So this is a shop that's doing 500,000. So basically what we said is there's labor sales of 250,000. There's part sales of 250,000. Truth be told, guys, the only thing that really matters in this scenario is the $250,000 in part sales. If this shop was doing $300,000 in labor, this really wouldn't affect what I'm trying to show you in this video. So let's say, like I said, we're going to stick to the $250,000 in part sales. And down here we have a tool where we can adjust the parts margin. So right now, the way this is set up, they're doing $500,000 in gross sales. The techs are making $100,000. So this shop might have 2 technicians, one making 60 and one making 40, or one making 70 and one making 30. It doesn't really matter. Their loaded wages, we'll call it 100%.
got a service advisor who's making $50,000. Again, for simplicity, right? This probably looks all sorts of different ways for all sorts of different shops, but when you're using this, you can adjust this. Whatever, I won't go in depth in that, but the advertising investment. So I always look at, and whenever I make a profit and loss statement, so even my QuickBooks is set up to where advertising is really considered an investment. So I break this out separate from my other expenses. Let's say this shop spends $20,000 a year on advertising. I don't know, maybe you want to spend more. It depends on how much you want to grow, how many customers, you lose every year. You need to figure that math out. Fixed expenses, so every year there's $50,000 in fixed expenses. The owner pays himself or herself an $80,000 a year salary, and the parts margin in this scenario is 40%. Okay. So what happens is we have $500,000 in gross sales. The parts profit is $100,000. The parts cost is $150,000. So basically what we're saying is this shop sells their parts for $250,000 to the customer. The shop spent $150,000 to buy the parts that they sold to the customer for $250,000. So basically what this says is you kept $100,000, the parts profit of the $250,000 sold was $100,000. So this shop kept $100,000 of the $250,000 in parts it sold, which is actually a 40% margin. So if I were to adjust this to a 50% margin, what I think you guys really, really need to understand is what didn't happen was I didn't increase my sales. Right? My gross sales didn't go up. So many shop owners get caught up in this. I have to make more sales. Let me explain something to you. If you make more sales and your margin isn't high enough, you won't make any more money. Let me repeat that. You can make the top line gross sales $1 million. If your margin isn't correct and you don't understand margin, you will make no more money. And in some cases, you'll just lose more money, right? Because your variable expenses continue to grow. Now, for a lot of people, I think that's too advanced, and that's not what we're trying to talk about, but I want to be very clear. Because you make more sales, because you ring the register more, doesn't mean that you're making more money. Okay, so let's go back to this. If I'm a shop owner, I'm making 40% margin. I pay myself $80,000. The business makes $50,000. So watch. I now make 50% margin. My sales didn't go up. However, my parts profit did, which actually in turn made my parts cost lower. So what happens is the business now makes $75,000 or a 15% net profit. And again, for you guys who are a little bit more advanced, I understand this is somewhat oversimplified. I get it, right? I'm not trying to talk to you. I'm trying to talk to the guy or the gal who doesn't really understand margin. So here's what happens. If you're running 40%, you make $50,000. If you run at 50% margin, you make $75,000. You've taken on no more cars, right? Your car count didn't change at all. Didn't mean nothing changed, guys. What happened is you made more money because you sold the job and really the parts to the customer for more money than you would have before. Now, what generally happens in this scenario? You actually don't lose any customers, you don't lose any sales, and your gross sales do actually increase. Now, that's a whole... There's more that goes into that, but we're just assuming that you do lose some sales, you lose some customers, and maybe you did do less work because you did actually keep more money, which means you had to do less work to do the $500,000, if that makes sense. And the way this plays out, right, you got to have a little better understanding of it. But now watch this. Some shops run at 60% margin. So there's shops out there, and I'm not exaggerating, that do $500,000 a year in sales. The owner might pay themselves $80,000, and there's still a net profit of $100,000. This is doable. So you guys are aware I did it. I owned a shop. Now we did about $600,000, but the numbers were actually comparable because I had my shop, my little shop where we did a ton of brake work. I ran at 59% margin. So for every $250,000 in parts I sold, the business had a profit on those parts of $147,000. So I hope what you can take away from this video is, with one very simple change, and we'll adjust it back to the original numbers. Simply going from a 40% margin to a 50% margin, you're going to make an additional $25,000. Now, let me be very clear, and I don't want to oversimplify this, but it's pretty simple, guys. It's not difficult. What has to happen is you have to go into your point of sale software and you have to adjust your matrix, and then you have to follow the matrix religiously. That's it. It's not that hard, and this starts happening overnight. Now, are there some tips and some tricks to make sure your customer perceives value? Because the price is going to go up. Right? A starter that you bought for $50 that was a starter that you bought for $50 that you were charging $100 for. If you adjust your margin, you might now charge $125 for it, right? So if you went from a 50% margin to a 60% margin, right? That's now going to raise the cost to the customer. I understand that, right? I will not dispute that with you. There are ways, and we can get into a different video, there are ways for the customer to never care about this. And if they do, you get to say, here's all the value you're receiving, right? Here's a warranty. Here's a roadside assistance. We did the free pickup and delivery. We did the loaner car. Right? Whatever it is, you get to add more value to the customer's purchase, and they leave you alone about it. But for honest God truth, if you ran at a 50% margin, you generally don't have to explain anything to your customer. They'll leave you alone. So anyhow, reach out to me, guys, man. I think this is something that changes shops' perspective, changes their income overnight. And really what they need to do is change their perspective on parts margin. Now, I understand for the shop that doesn't have any concept of what this means, a lot of this is overwhelming. That's what I want to do. I want to help you guys. I want to help you guys get through this and have a better understanding of your numbers and have a better understanding of your break even and have a better understanding of how margin and what you charge your customer directly reflects how much money your business makes. Thanks, guys.